Welcome to Thieves' Cant, a tabletop gaming podcast, with your hosts, Jeremy Shane and Chris White.
Welcome back and welcome in Thieves' Cant, Saturday, August 16th. I'm Jeremy Shane.
And I'm Chris White.
Hope you are doing well. Thanks for being here for another episode of Thieves' Cant. Thanks for following us at thievescantcast. If you want to get in touch with us, you can email thievescantcast@gmail.com. You can't see it right now because we have embraced the audio format, the audio-only format. But Chris has gone over the top this morning. That hat has been turned around backwards. I know that you mean business today.
Well, it could be that the bill of my cap was smacking this microphone that's in my face, or it could be that it's about to get real.
In today's show, we received such a great response to our question of the week last time about memorable character deaths that no new question of the week this time. We're going to go back and revisit not revisit, but we've got some extra stories to share from the community about memorable character deaths.
You guys are awesome. I don't know if we say that enough, but
we need to say it more.
The feedback is great, and the stories are great, and we love reading them and sharing them with you guys.
So that's coming up in our crowdfunding spotlight. We're going to explore an expansion for Heart, the City Beneath, and Chris is going to make a splash with our new segment, The Lore Dump. Are we calling it The Lore Dump?
That's what you called it. That's what it's called for now.
It's a working title, so we'll get to that as well. But first, we've got some headlines to take a look at. All right, the new Castles and Crusades starter set from Troll Lord Games is out. Chris, you've mentioned your page through of Castles and Crusades recently. I know that you've been taking a look at that core rule book.
Yeah, I'm excited about this. I haven't got to run the game yet, but this is perfect. This would be a good starting out point, so I'm all for it.
Yeah, 3 books included. You get your character creation guide, you get your GM manual, and there's a first-level adventure Into the Dark. You get PDFs of those 3 books as well, in addition to the physical book. I guess you get a code maybe that you can redeem at their store. It also includes character sheets, a set of dice, so pretty basic, but it's everything that you need. And, I mean, Castles and Crusades, that's kind of a goal, is to be pretty basic. Now, I do have to share the first line of the product description here. In your hands, you hold the very font of imagination. Now, I don't know about all that, but I'm sure it's a fine starter set.
You know what? I'm intrigued.
I like the hyperbole.
I like it. I like it.
Yeah. Confident. How about the new Cosmere RPG? PDFs released in July, I think, sometime. Well, now the physical books have a release date. That is coming up, as reported by Christian Hofer on InWorld, October 29th. October 29th. You can get your
pretty
hands,
quick.
Yeah, on those first 3 volumes. Of course, the Cosmere RPG, based on the works of fantasy author Brandon Sanderson. It raised like $900 billion on Kickstarter last year. $15 million was the total there. The most successful RPG Kickstarter, and one of the most successful Kickstarters, period, I think, of all time.
And the digital copies, they're already out, right?
Yep, July.
For backers? Okay.
Yep. Those first 3 volumes focus on the world of Roshar. That's from Sanderson's Stormlight Archive series. No familiarity here on my part. I know he is one of the top names in fantasy fiction these days, but I still have yet to read anything from Sanderson.
Yeah, I don't know anything about it either, but where there's smoke, there's fire.
Absolutely, right?
Pretty popular.
Yeah. The guys on Mastering Dungeons this week on their show raised an interesting question. All these new RPGs that are coming out, Cosmere included, are they going to bring new players into the hobby, or are we just selling books to the same crowds over and over?
You mean based off the popularity of the The series?
Well, that would be a point in favor of Cosmere being able to bring new people in, as opposed to, well, we're talking Draw Steel on our sister show, Thieves Can't Capers. You know, MCDM has an incredible following, but I don't know that Draw Steel is going to bring new players into the hobby. Right. Certainly, it's people are playing the game.
Yeah,
but they're already in the hobby.
Yeah.
So Cosmere maybe brings a new player base in. Who knows?
Well, yeah. I mean, if the people share that interest, that's certainly likely. I mean, think about Game of Thrones. I'm sure there's more than a few people who were willing to dip their toes in a fantasy RPG because they were like, this is way cooler than I thought. They might have never had exposure to something like that.
Sure. So. Is your average Brandon Sanderson fan, are they going to be more interested in picking this up simply to have on the shelf? Or are they actually going to invest themselves in the hobby? Well, that's a question we might not get the answer to.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's all speculative.
Yeah.
Wizards of the Coast announced earlier this week. It was not an announcement. This is from an interview that John Haidt, WotC president, he did with the gaming business. So not an announcement, but he was asked about the potential for a Baldur's Gate 4. And in the words of the president of WotC, of course we're going to do Baldur's Gate 4.
Sure. I mean, Baldur's Gate 3 was one of their biggest wins that they've had in the last few years, so that makes sense. However, I don't think I'll be on the pre-order list for this one.
Yeah.
Let's wait and see how it turns out.
We have no other details aside from the news that we talked about months ago that Larian Studios has taken themselves out of the conversation. Mm-hmm. They know we are not involved in any way. Mm-hmm. We don't really care to be.
Yeah.
We've done that dance, and we did it well.
Yeah, I think Larian is a very special studio, and what they did was incredible. But, yeah, I'm going to reserve my opinion on this one until it's out or we've seen what's happening, who's making it. So, a lot of question marks there.
All right, that'll do it for the headlines. Now let's bounce over to crowdfunding. I thought this was really cool. Last week when we were talking memorable character deaths, one story we received featured the game Heart the City Below, which we were not familiar with at all. This was the one that had the train paladin that cast that crazy ritual.
Oh, yeah.
Right? So Heart the City Below has a new supplement funding on BackerKit. It's called Ways and Means. This is from Rowan, Rook, and Deckard. So what are they funding? A new hardback source book called Ways and Means, a deck of delve-generating cards, and a booklet of new content for the GM screen. That book, of course, is your main attraction with new classes, new character options, expanded rules options, pets, gear, spells, artifacts, creatures, like a true expansion for the game. If you're like us and Heart the City Below is a new title to you, the campaign page says that the game is about delving into a nightmare undercity that will give you everything you've ever dreamed of or kill you in the process. It's a dungeon crawler, story-focused, though. It really explores what characters have to lose in pursuit of their dreams.
Sounds interesting.
It does.
Sounds like a lot of replayability, too.
Sure, especially with they mentioned this deck of cards, the delve-generating cards. So randomizing what that delve is going to look like. Various pledge levels. You can go big on this one. There are some high-dollar tiers if you're interested. It's got 17 days left to fund as of this recording. That is our crowdfunding spotlight. And now, well, are you ready for our new segment, Chris?
No.
Are you ready? Are you ready to unleash the new segment?
I am.
Until Chris comes up with a better title, it's the Lore Dump. We are talking Draw Steel on our sister show, Thieves Can't Capers. And that show, we really like to focus in on mechanics, on what this game actually does for us at the table. And there's a lot of lore that we're not going to be able to dive deep in on that show. So that's where this new segment comes in.
Here's the deal. And so I'm going to put a little disclaimer at the beginning. There is a lot of lore in Draw Steel. There's some very intelligent people making this game who have contemplated these decisions and how things are set up. I am very late to the game, I will tell you now. So today we're going to talk about an overview of the cosmology, I guess you would say, the worlds that are involved here. So when we're looking at using the word cosmology, I don't know that that's the terminology they would use. We're going to start off talking about the higher worlds. Okay, so there's a great illustration in the Heroes book that sort of shows this idea.
Yeah, I know what page you're talking about.
Yeah.
It's really cool.
It is, and it encompasses a lot of what we're going to talk about today. But so the higher worlds, when you think about them, like they refer to them as more energetic, but essentially these worlds have access to really like what we would think of as alien technology. So basically, yeah, you're going to have people in spaceships firing effectively lasers at each other, and you're going to have people with lightsabers fighting one another. So I mean, you can see how this is a very different than a traditional fantasy setting, and this is not the focus of the books as they are now, but there's certainly that door is open.
Right. If they want to add future expansions, absolutely they can.
Right. And so logically you would say, why don't these things bleed into the other portions of the game? And then the reason there again is this energy that's applied to it. These lower worlds, as we move down, so we can sort of think of it as a ladder we're moving down.
Okay.
The lower worlds don't have the energy to support that technology. And so while it's possible that those things could be brought in by extraordinary means, that would be unusual. So instead, the people in these lower planes essentially use magic to cheat the system. So the lower planes, lower tech, right? But magic becomes more prevalent. In the same regard, psionics. Matt Colville has even said that initially when considering psionics, they considered it what Jedis do, or in many ways similar to mutants like X-Men or something like that. Very much not magic, but still a supernatural power. And so that's more present in these higher worlds and less so in the lower worlds, but it still happens. There are still psionicists. So we have to recognize there's a difference there. And so now we're going to look at two planes that are really diametrically opposed from each other. And the first is Axiom, and it's described as the plane of uttermost law. And so this is where now
are we still talking like upper planes right now?
Yes.
Is Axiom and upper?
Yes,
okay.
these are on the upper end of the spectrum.
Okay.
This is law incarnate, right? This is where the Miminek live. There's a lot of inorganic life that can be found here. And so essentially this place is law. Like there's no mix. Okay. It is exclusively order. And on the other side of that, we have Proteus. And Proteus is the uttermost plane of chaos.
Flip side of the coin?
Yeah, the sea of eternal change. And so this is the home of the Proteans. And they are a people of chaos. They're, with constantly changing forms. It is the polar opposite. Things are constantly in flux here. And so what we find is outside of Axiom and Proteus, every world is a mix. And when we get to, for example, Orden is really like almost 50-50. Like it is like almost a pure mix of that law and chaos.
Which makes sense if it is your default setting that you kind of want it to be a catch-all to some degree.
The next plane we want to talk about is Quintessence. And this is the lowest of the upper worlds.
Got it.
So this is where, the Miminex and the Proteans are going to be rubbing shoulders, as they put it, with devils and fire dwarves and humans. It has the capital city of Alloy at the center of the timescape. So this is a sort of a mixing ground here, a lot of diversity. Alloy is known as the city of brass, and it's a gateway for the timescape. So if you want to get into some of those shenanigans, again, you're venturing apart from what might be considered traditional fantasy. And then when you go down from quintessence, again, we're kind of thinking this is a ladder that we're moving up and down. You go to Orden, okay? And Orden is significant. Probably going to talk about Orden a little more in just a second. We'll do our run of the planes, and then we'll talk about Orden. But, yeah, Orden is where basically the game takes place for most people, at least at this point. Orden is the setting that you're going to be most involved in. You know, the gods are active here. There's magic. A place where the gods aren't allowed to interfere directly, but they still find a way to interfere plenty. It's a low energy state. So again, you're not going to see a lot of lightsabers and flying ships and blasters here, right? This is going to be more what we would think of as typical fantasy. The last plane of law is the 7 cities of hell, and that's where the devils come from. It's the lowest of the lower planes, which makes it sound kind of unpleasant, right? This isn't
Sure.
This isn't where you want to go. But the devils are actually very proud of their civilization. Every one of them is attempting to ascend to the throne of hell.
There's like a lot of bureaucracy, right?
There is a lot of bureaucracy. There is a lot of law here. It has a heavy influence. So again, you won't always see that law and chaos in balance. Orden's kind of the exception, because in a place like this, law definitely rules. Don't equate law with good necessarily.
Correct.
Right? It's order and chaos. And so, yeah, there is a lot of bureaucracy here. In general, the denizens of hell don't have a lot of interest in the other planes because they kind of love where they live. So it's an interesting place. And so below that, and again, that's the last plane of law. And so now we're getting into the planes of more chaos. And when we talk about that, we really have to talk about the abyssal waste. And this is the dwelling place of the demons. Constant competition for souls. There's constant battle. So the demons are constantly attempting to escape. They want to get upward. They want to climb that ladder.
They're not happy here.
Yeah.
Clearly.
Yeah. And they don't want to lose the souls that they've collected or their identity, because they can actually fall into a mindless state where they lose themselves. So it's a constant battle there. And in the center of the abyssal waste, there is a necropolitan ruin, such as it is, a city of the dead. And it's interesting.
Necropolitan. I like that.
Yeah. And it's ruled by Korsakov, once the infinite pharaoh of Kimhara, but he is now the Ultra Lich. So,
Ultra Lich.
Yeah, that's pretty exciting, right? Ultra Lich, I like that. And so that's
less calories.
And so that is a really wide overview of this cosmology. And so really as a player, it's cool to have some understanding of those other things that are going on, but Orden is really where your focus is going to be. Magic is prevalent, but it's not necessarily available to everyone. For example, in Capital, the average citizen doesn't have access to them, but they have like flying carpets, right? They use magic as transport.
For those with the means, yes, they have access. If you don't have the means, and most people don't, then yeah,
you're hoofing it, right?
Right.
Yeah. And so Capital is this city. It's there's sort of this conflict between these powerful houses and these guilds that serve different purposes. They both have different agendas. They both have their intentions of what they'd like to see in the city. A lot of intrigue, a lot of quiet conflict going on oftentimes. So Capital's a very interesting place.
That could be fun.
Yeah, absolutely. But really today we want to just focus more on this overview of Orden as a whole, because it's really the setting where the game is going to take place. There are 8 major regions, the largest of which is Vasloria. It's a forested medieval feudal land is how it's described. And so this is really like your fantasy setting.
If you're coming over from your D20 fantasy game, you've probably been playing in a setting similar to this.
Right. Yes, very much so. And it's in what's called, we're in the age of chaos, as it's referred to now. So Vasluria does not have a lot of large cities. Instead, it's more small settlements, towns, villages. But there are those geographic areas set aside. For example, Andrum is a land of hills and farms, Corwell, knights and castles. So you can see how a lot of different fantasy tropes are played out here. You can set the game where you want, and the idea that you want, whatever you enjoy. The Northeast is very mountainous. There's a lot of small earldoms. There are elf-haunted woads, as they're referred to.
Yeah, where the woad elves live.
Yeah, these are very interesting. They remember a time before the dwarves were sent into the world, and there was this imposition of the law of time. And so time does not function the way that we would understand it. And the woad elves are perfectly adapted to that environment. So these woads that are scattered about sound like a pretty interesting place for an adventure. And so as we talk about these lands, we have to talk about Good King Omund, right? And this is...
I have his dice set, the Good King Omund Deluxe dice set.
Well, I've got some bad news.
Oh,
He's
no.
dead.
Oh, no.
Yeah. He's been dead for about 15 years.
Well, at least he's not going to want his dice back.
That's true. King Omund's rule was generally considered wonderful, right? This was...
You don't just get the name Good King Omund.
Yeah, he earned it. He ruled for about 35 years. But unfortunately, after his passing, those safe paths have become overgrown. The world's become a little more dangerous. And there's become a usurper, and he's the Iron Saint, Ajax. Instituted a tyrannical rule, a lot of bad stuff going on. And so that's really where the game is set, the setting itself.
In the default, this is kind of the current state of affairs.
Right.
Okay.
And I think, maybe in lore dumps going forward, we can dig in a little more to some of those individuals. But, just kind of gives you an idea. The base setting, again, it's pretty standard fantasy. We have the fallen kingdom and the tyrant in power. And so that's where we find ourselves. And so, again, I know we were all over the place, but it was just sort of to introduce the world on a large scale, and we're going to bring it down to where it's at now. So I hope that's helpful to newer players who haven't been following us. I'm sure if you've been following the lore for a long time, you're like, yeah, bro, we know all that,
If you've been a long-time Patreon supporter, for example, of MCDM, you've probably known this for a while.
Right. And so, we are still pretty new to a lot of this, and we're learning, and hopefully the things we found are helpful to you, and we'll dig in a little deeper on some of this going forward.
All right. Before we wrap things up, as promised, let's head back to the community over on Reddit, the TTRPG and RPG subreddits, where we got so many great responses to that question, what's the most memorable character death you've witnessed at the table? We want to hit just a few more of these stories that we didn't get to last time. Let me start this off with Wee Mad Lloyd's comment. He says, the game was aberrant, the premise was superheroes, and the incident... He says, my character had the ability of molecular manipulation, not just to alter the appearance of something, but to change that matter completely. I could turn a wooden spoon into a real gold coin. That's kind of cool. That's a powerful ability.
Oh, yeah.
Right? He says, we were tasked with rescuing a hostage held in a hotel room on the 15th floor. The plan... I turned the doorknob into a contact explosive, instant flashbang. A massive botch on the roll. The whole floor collapsed. TPK with 400 dead. That is a memorable character death.
I want to just think right before that happened, he just kind of went, oh! Boom.
Again, I love that power, but it didn't work out in the end.
Well, that's how it goes sometimes. I mean, I'm sure it was a funny session. Yeah. Hopefully everybody laughed.
All right, bring on another.
Designated Import writes, Delta Green, playing the bone-deep scenario from Fear's Sharp Little Needles. A PC handed over their business card to an NPC who they didn't know was a magic-wielding ghoul and the pack's leader.
Oh, no.
They stopped the ghouls, or so they thought. The leader used the business card to infect the PC's bones with debilitating, painful magic.
Oh.
The leader told the PC that they were to obey them or the leader would kill the PC's family. The PC was supposed to meet the leader in a cemetery. The PC wore a suicide vest, sacrificing himself and killing the ghoul to save his family. There were actually tears at the table. Kind of dark.
Very dark.
But, the self-sacrificing, the against all odds win, that can be pretty powerful, too.
Yeah, and if you can take out the bad guy at the same time, there's some satisfaction there. And I mean, the fact that there were tears at the table, that's a group that's engaged in that narrative, that story, those characters. And, ultimately that's the dragon we're all chasing.
Yeah.
Right.
And it's recognizing sometimes it's time for this character to die. We had this in our Call of Cthulhu game.
Right.
I think towards the end there, we all realized it's time.
It happens. And sometimes for the better of the story in the game.
It's kind of nice when you can do it on your own terms.
All right, one more. This one comes from Yotja Trooper. I'm positive I mispronounced that. They say, my character in Warhammer Fantasy role-playing practiced a bad fighting style. I don't know what that fighting style looked like, but it was bad. Committed too hard to it and suffered the consequences of a brutal system. When he died, Eric had a torn muscle in his back and 2 broken legs. Got around on crutches or by crawling in combat. Oh. His last act was punching an ogre to death with brass knuckles. It fell on him, and he was presumably crushed. The whole castle shortly collapsed on top of them, so if the ogre didn't do it, the masonry did.
A little cherry on top.
Right. Well, I mean, you punched an ogre to death. That's kind of cool.
That is kind of a cool way to go.
But then the ogre fell on him.
Yeah. And then if that didn't do him in, the whole castle fell on him too. Right. So, well, just wasn't meant to be for Eric.
Yeah. Hey, thanks again for those stories. We'll have a new question of the week next time. Freshen things up. Again, if you want to reach out about anything you heard today, the news, the crowdfunding, the character deaths, the lore of MCDM's Draw Steel, you can hit us up at thievescantcast. You can email thievescantcast@gmail.com. And don't forget, you can join us later this week, a new episode of Thieves Can't Capers, where we'll take a look at Draw Steel a little more in depth. We're on to the Making a Character section. We're going to look at those steps of how do you create a Draw Steel hero and what are the ancestries that are available. So we will touch on some of that lore in that episode. Until then, have a great week. We will see you next time. I'm Jeremy Shane.
And I'm Chris White.
It's been Thieves Can't. So long.
Thank you for listening to Thieves Can't. Email thievescantcast@gmail.com.